very hot, blah, blah, blah. And he was so, when this man woke up from the dream, he was so moved that he was given the grace to respond to his vocation, entered the seminary, became a priest, became a bishop, went to another diocese to visit another bishop one day. And that bishop said, stay with me tonight. Tomorrow morning I'm going to a convent. I'm going to say mass. Now, the Bishop Kettler had never told anyone about this dream. The following morning, they go to mass at this convent. They celebrate mass. Both bishops are administering Holy Communion. Bishop Kettler goes to give Holy Communion to his sister, and oh my gosh, it's the sister from the dream. And so after mass, they have breakfast, they meet the Mother Superior, and Bishop Kettler says, I'd really love to meet every sister here. Could you gather the sisters? And he doesn't say why. She gathers all the sisters. He's going down the line, meaning he's like, she's not here, she's not here, she's not here, she's not here. And he says, is everyone here? And the mother, oh, well, we have a sister. She's kind of like an extern sister, but she's out in the barn. And he said, well, really, I'd like to meet everyone. So has her come in, and the bishop says, could I meet with her, individually, since she's the last one? And so he speaks to the sister about her work and who she is and what she does. And, she's simple, she's not educated, she's a little bit mistreated by the other sisters in some ways, a little bit, of an outcast. But she loves Jesus, and she offers everything she does, all the hard work that he asks her about. Is it hard? Well, it is, but I offer it to the Lord. He says, who do you offer it for? She says, I offer it to Jesus for the soul that needs it the most. And I know he does with it what he wants. And he realizes that she's quite young, and he's older than her. And he's thinking, and he says, when were you born? And she tells him the date, and it was the day he was ordained. Wow. So God uses all of the things that she offered before she was born for the grace for this man to become a bishop. So your personal holiness matters. You may never see what God does with it. You may never meet the person that he uses those graces for. But your witness, your holiness touches people that you never see. It may touch all the people in the grocery store. It may touch the people in the traffic jam with you. But first and foremost, before you ever have an apostolate or do something, to show the Lord how much you love him, your holiness matters. And Father Giuseppe is right. It changes lives, and your witness changes people. My father's witness and a group that I traveled with, Medjugorje, changed my life and brought about my conversion, and that's the reason I'm here today. So I can authenticate that. So just to encourage you that through this living out of community in this society, both in your small groups and your regional groups and then bigger groups today, that path to holiness and that path to virtue means something to the Lord, and that he uses that. So if you ever start to feel like I'm not really doing anything, I should make more soap. I'm not knocking the soap, I like the soap. But there's more to holiness than that. And that just to remind you that God uses that. And he uses women, Our Lady, supporting our Lord and being with our Lord and consoling him. If you ever doubt, remember her and remember that she was always with him and a consolation to him. So to talk about community, what is community? I found myself thinking it's a common thing that unifies us. And when I think of a group of women, I started to think about being a bridesmaid, and we're all unified around the bride. And we were, I don't know what it's like now. I mean, I'm 56. When I was a bridesmaid, we wore awful dresses. And, you dyed your shoes a color that you would never dye them for anyone else on earth. And so we were united around the bride because we loved her. We loved her. And, we're called to it, and we know that we want it. It's why we join book clubs. It's why we have pampered chef parties. These are all things I did before as a sister. It's why we play sports. It's why we want to be on a team. It's why we join groups, because we want to belong to something, because we want to be affirmed, because we want to be loved. But really, it's because ultimately, what I read from the Catechism, it's how we're made. We're made to be in relationship with each other. And instead of, the sports team that unites us or the particular book, because all of those things after a while, I tried all those things before as a sister, after a while, they all fall flat. Because really, as with Martha and Mary, and we're all a little bit Martha, we're all a little bit Mary, some of us are more one than the other, but there's just one thing that unites us, and it's him. He's the one thing that unites us. So in your living out of community, both at home, whether that's you're single, you're married, you're widowed, It doesn't matter. He's the one thing that unites all of us. But in your living out of this community here, to always keep your eyes fixed on him. It's easy, and I know this, I live an intentional, intensely communal life with other sisters, like Sister Elizabeth, and I live together and travel together numerous times. And Sister Elizabeth and I are incredibly different. Aren't we, Sister Elizabeth? She's cracking up at the back. We're very, very different. We traveled together for 3 weeks in Rome, and I learned that Sister Elizabeth loves every flavor of fruity gelato there is. Every time we got gelato every day, because we were told to, kind of in obedience. So she told me that, so I did it. So, she'd show up at the store, and it's like, tutti frutti, woo! And I'm like, what is wrong with you? So, but I mean, I love Sister Elizabeth, and now every time I see a fruity gelato or a fig, she loves figs, I think of Sister Elizabeth and I smile because I know she loves them. But it's only because we live in community that I can say that. Before community, I would have been like, I don't think we can be friends because I don't like those things. So in community, I live this intensely fraternal community life. I've chosen to live with other women. We're united in this one thing, but we live a common life. We share laundry. We do each other's laundry. We share the cooking. We pray together, we live together this intense life, and Father Giuseppe's right. It's the greatest blessing I've ever had in my life, aside from my vocation, is fraternal life and community. And it's probably one of the biggest hardships. As women, I can't speak to what the brothers are like because I don't live in the friary, but for women, I'd say the biggest hardship is that I'm confronted every day with who I really am, because I live with my sisters, and because they tell me the truth, because they love me. So that's community. Community is Saint Therese allowing the sister who she was doing the laundry next to splash her with water and not say anything, and to try to love that sister in that. Community is Saint Therese. The jingling of Carmelites have chains on their rosaries, is the jingling of another sister's chain driving her nuts and giving her a headache. And she said, well, I love that sister. We're both called in Christ. We're both united in him. We're both striving to go towards him. I'm going to make up a song to the jingle of her rosary, is what I'm going to do. And I think that's what she did. No, I'm not Saint Therese. I can spend an entire holy hour getting annoyed about a sister turning the pages really loudly, never mind this knocking, in her breviary. And that happened one time, and at the end of that holy hour, another sister came to me and said, now sister, are you getting a cold? I'm like, what? No. Do you have allergies? No, I think I'm fine. Okay, well, do you know that you sniffled the entire holy hour? I'm like, I'm annoying. I'm annoying to live with. And I thought the other person was annoying, but guess what? I'm annoying too. And she said it lovingly and kindly. She was worried I needed a tissue, but she was also letting me know it's incredibly distracting. And I thought, well, I'm distracting, that other sister, we're all distracting, but you know what? I'm still loved in community. So for us as sisters, and I don't know if you all have this is where I learned that I don't know if we're exactly, we're this same community, but there's a lot of things that are different. But for the sisters, we talk about that there are 3 parts to our life. It makes up a little 3-legged stool. So there's prayer, there's community life, and there's apostolate. And they pretty much go in that order. So I hear that first and foremost, the expectation is that you have a personal prayer life. So we have a personal prayer life. And for us, that's because we're espoused to Christ. And just like if you're married, you want to have time with your spouse. So for us, personal prayer life is first and foremost. You have to have a relationship with the Lord, or everything else is just a wash. But for us, the next place where we live out that love of Christ is in community, is in loving the other and being with the other, showing charity to the other, telling the truth to the other person, being intentional about loving them and serving them. And only then, if you're living that well, can you really go and do apostolate? It's sort of that, charity begins at home. If we're not showing charity in the convent and loving the sisters and trying to be kind and we all fail at that, which is why we all go to confession too. But it doesn't, then to go show charity outside of the house, if you can't love the people that God gave you here, then this love isn't backed up by the previous two. So for us, it's those three pillars. So I was really struck when I heard that the first thing is that there's an expectation for you to have a personal prayer life. And that when you come together in these small groups, it's not to make soap and it's not to gather diapers or make prayer shawls or anything like that, but it's to listen to each other, to pray with each other, and to support each other. And I just thought that was really beautiful, and how similar that is to our life. The other thing that we talk about in community life, our Father Andrew Apostoli, who is our founder, he was always teaching us this, that in community, it's like you put a bunch of coal together, and eventually we rub each other long enough, and we become diamonds. That, only, diamonds start out very hard, and you could cut glass with them. But the kind that you want on your ring is the one that's been buffed down and softened edges. But the only way that happens is usually by rubbing it with another diamond. So Father Andrew would always tell us, when you come, you're all diamonds in the rough. You're really more like coal. Eventually, you become bright and shiny. That's normally towards the end. So we're all striving to be diamonds. So you're not called to live community. You're not called to leave your spouses and your children and any of that and go live together in a house somewhere. You're not called to that. I'm called to that. Sister Elizabeth's called to that. Father Giuseppe's called to that. But you all are called to live this community. So what does that look like? And what can I share with you to feed that? Does anybody watch The Chosen? Yes. Do you know the scene where Mary Magdalene, and I don't know the name of the other woman, but it's the African-American woman with, when they sit down, what's her name? Tamar. When they sit down and they have that conversation, that very long conversation, basically, which is, underneath it all is like, I don't really like you. That's what you're all nodding like, yes, I know what you're talking about. That's the building of community. And I'm not saying you should sit down and start telling each other what you don't like about each other. That's not what I'm saying. But it's that they were intentional enough to love each other enough to sit down and have that conversation. Because they realized that there was this one thing that united them. They both wanted to follow him. They both fell in love with him. They both wanted to be with him. They both wanted to serve him. And the Lord put them together so that they could grow, so that they could be expanded, so that they could be transformed, so that they could love each other, so that they could tell each other the truth, and that they could seek understanding, which is really what that conversation is about. It's not really that, here's all the reasons I don't like you, but it's really trying to seek to understand what the other person is like and why they do what they do. I love that scene. I sort of saw it out of context of anything, but I had seen enough of The Chosen to know, oh my gosh, this is incredible that they're showing this. So how do you live out this community? There were a couple of things that came to mind. The first was charity. There was a great quote that I have over here somewhere. I read this, I was trying to read about charity. So this is actually from a psychologist said this, but it was in particular about community, and he said, one must stand on tiptoe and look over the high brim of self. So you have to look out past yourself and your own needs and your own stuff and your own problems and your own wants and your own desires. And you have to look to the needs of others if one is to participate in community. So if you want to have community in your small group with these other women, you need to come out of yourself and look to the other. And this is, the rest of this quote, I think women, we are really, really good at this. No offense, Father Giuseppe, you in particular are very good at this. But women, we're just good at this. Such participation involves more than just looking at the needs of others. It involves an emotional understanding of those needs, and this leads to relevant contact with those who have needs. So as women, we're good at listening to each other, but we're also good at hearing what's underneath being said and understanding the need of the other person. So for me, when I have been praying for all of you and listening to the different things today and seeing you together, this recognition that charity is probably one of the first things to take you outside of yourself, to love and serve. And I don't mean serve by going and doing something, trimming your hedges that you won't let your dad trim. I mean, that'd be nice if you all went over in the middle of the night and did that. But to listen to the fact that there's a need there. You mentioned vulnerability numerous times, I'm not picking on you. But that there's a need for vulnerability. So to see that need for vulnerability, to see that need for community, to see that need for love, and to respond to that, as other women do. And we have a particular gift to be able, as mothers, as sisters, as women, to be able to respond to that. And so, to show charity, everything about community is giving and receiving. So you want to be able to give charity, and you want to be able to receive charity. You want to be able to be vulnerable, but you want to be able to receive someone else's vulnerability. You want to be able to tell the truth, and you want to be able to hear the truth. These are all the things that make up community: truth, vulnerability, charity. So truth, for instance, you want to be able to tell your sister if, one of your pillars is modesty. You want to be able to tell someone the truth if they're being modest in dress, if they're being modest in their speech, if they're being modest in their behavior, or if they're not. And you want to be able to hear and receive the truth. Somebody in their talk, one of the two of you, used the word accountability. So you're meant to have charity and love, but part of that is telling God's honest, accountable truth to each other. Actually, sister, when you said that the other day, when we were having that thing and we were doing that thing together, it came across really harsh and you really hurt my feelings. And is there something going on that I need to know about? Or, when you wore that top, when we went to such and such a place, I was distracted, so I can only imagine how everybody else was. Like, what's going on? You're not normally like that. To be able to, now this is a little bit of a Pandora's box, because if these types of things are not done in charity, in love, both in giving and receiving, and in trust, and if they're not done in Him and because of Him, then it can go very badly. But that is the goal of community, for you to be able to arrive at a place where you can share with each other like that, where you can be able to know each other, where you can be able to as beautifully share everything you shared today, which I was really so moved. I was like, I haven't heard anyone be this vulnerable in a long, long time. And if that's what this group is doing, then Lord, this is amazing. But to be able to arrive at that place where you can be that vulnerable, receive that from each other, and then to respond in truth and in love. And to be able to remember that sometimes the Lord's not calling you to say anything. He's just calling you to be patient and to grow in virtue. St. Francis has a admonition that he gives us that we read as friars and sisters a couple of times a week. We read different admonitions and fervorinas from St. Francis, and one of them is about patience. And he says, you may think you're patient and humble, but you're only as patient and humble when the people that you love, who normally make you happy, irritate you and make you impatient. And that's as patient, as humble as you are in that moment, not any more, not any less. So when you come together in your groups, and maybe you do feel like saying something, but you feel like the Lord's saying, no, 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 I just want you to love the other person. And internally, you're incredibly impatient and not feeling so humble. It's the time to exercise virtue. Because loving the other person, as you all know, as adult women, has absolutely nothing to do with how you feel. It all has to do with your will. You don't get up in the middle of the night to feed the baby and clean up the vomit because you're, oh my gosh, the baby is so cute. That is not the moment that you're like, oh my gosh, my baby is so adorable. I love my baby. You're like choosing to love your baby in that moment. When your little toddler's pooped everywhere or gotten finger painting all over the wall. You love them, but you're choosing. It's in your will. It's not in how you feel, and you know that. So you're called to exercise that love with each other. The other thing that I think comes up when I think about community is all the things that can block us and all the obstacles. And I think one of the biggest ones is fear, sin, shame, things that we don't want each other to know, that we don't want anyone to know about us, that we're okay if Jesus knows, but we're not okay if everybody else knows. And we're not okay if everybody else in the Society of St. Lydia knows. Maybe Father Giuseppe can know, I can go to confession, I can tell him, but I'm not going to tell anybody else. And I'm not saying you should go to confession to each other, but to just remind you that, the woman at the well sure had a lot of shame. She came at noon. She didn't come at 9 o'clock when the other women came. But she came at noon when no one else would be around because she was embarrassed and she was ashamed because she had had 5 husbands. And she met Jesus and she didn't think he knew that. And he wanted something from her. He wanted a drink. What he really wants is her. And they have an entire conversation about water and life-giving water and the gift of God and all these things. And she's trying to understand. And then she finally gets it and realizes he's different. And she wants to stay with him and she wants to be with him. And he says, okay, go get your husband. And she says, I don't have a husband. And he says, no, but you've had 5. So he knows her shame. But she has experienced love from him in a way that she doesn't care. Because what does she do? She leaves the jar. She doesn't need the water anymore. And she goes back to the town and she tells everyone, come and meet someone who told me everything I ever did. Now the people in town already know everything she ever did. That's why she was coming at noon. But something has happened to the point where she feels so loved and so accepted that she doesn't care. She doesn't care. That's the goal. That's the goal, is for you to experience love from him through each other, first of all, in your individual prayer lives, but then through each other, through speaking the truth, hearing the truth, to the point where you can say to the women that you're inviting to this group, come meet other women who have met the one who know everything I've ever done, because it will change your life. And you will be transformed. It's a great gift for me to be able to live in my community, but for 5 years, I lived in Rome, and I lived outside of my community. We don't have a convent there. And that was the time for me. I lived in a convent with sisters from different communities. And as much as I appreciated fraternal life and communal life, I never appreciated it so much as I did during those 5 years, because I came to learn that not even all religious sisters live community life the way that our particular community does. But I learned in that time that if we really still strive for it, and I had a lot of conversations, like I had a conversation with a sister from Ghana, who every night when we had chicken, she's like, Sister Monica, no finish her chicken. And I thought she was judging me. I know, are you from Ghana? She loves chicken. They just love chicken. And I thought she was judging me. And I was like, I'm gonna put her through a wall, is what was going on. And I'm like, I cannot believe she's judging me openly about my chicken eating. Her bones are nice and clean, mine still have the fat on them. So one night I had it and I said, Sister Mary, we need to talk about the chicken. Like, why do you say this every single time? She goes, I love chicken. I think if you don't finish it, you will give me your chicken. I'm like, you want my chicken? She goes, yeah. But like, we're from different places, and I don't know what that means. But it wasn't until we sat down and had this conversation that I was like, I thought you're judging me with the chicken. She goes, oh my gosh, no, I love chicken. I'm like, wow. But the next thing she said to me is, this means you love me. I'm like, what? She goes, the fact that you are telling me and talking to me means you love me. I'm like, of course I love you. We live together. I want to love you. She goes, but this means you love me because you don't want to be mad at me. I'm like, well, no, we're sisters. Isn't this what we do? She goes, not everybody does this. But it showed me that if I could be intentional and try to live out what I've learned in my own community with other sisters, that I could still have that community with someone who wasn't even of my own community, that there were some basic principles at work. And I remember really distinctly when I was leaving, there was another sister from America. She was from Nebraska, much younger than me. And I know she was talking about the sister from Ghana, Sister Mary Chiara. And I said to Sister Mary Chiara, she spent 1 year in Rome. And I said, what has this year meant to you? Because I was really impressed by her virtue and her striving to love and her charity and her patience. And she said to me, this whole experience has expanded everything about me. I mean, we ate a lot of gelato and a lot of pasta, so she felt like she expanded it in all kinds of ways. But she said, mainly in her heart and in her mind, she said, you know, it's been so expansive just for my community life, for me as a person, my soul, my mind. She said, but really my heart. She said, because I never thought that I could love someone who was so different than me this much. I love her, I love that sister so much, and she is so different than me. But it was only through virtue, truth, charity, patience, listening, sharing, vulnerability. It was only through striving to live communion with the other sisters that she was able to say that at the end. So I pray that that is so for you in this society, this consorority, that both in your small groups, in your regional groups, and your bigger groups, and I feel like I've witnessed it today, seeing you together, but I just pray that this time together, that this society and the church will be something to really nourish you, to feed you, because I can attest to the fact that your witness is very powerful. Your witness will change hearts, that your witness as women changes men, that the more and more that you are women, that you are maternal, that you are modest, that you are beauty, that you are loving, that you are really called, as Father Giuseppe said, that you become who you are called to be, that you make men be men, you know? They're not going to be men if you're not women. They don't know who to be. That you inform them, not by saying anything, but just by who you are. And if you allow this group to become a fire, a well-fed fire in your heart, that it will be, as Father Giuseppe said, as St. Catherine of Siena said, become who you are meant to be, and that fire will flame out from you and change the world and set the world on fire. So know of my prayers for you, and thank you for having us come. It's been a delight to be with you. And in a few minutes, Sister Elizabeth is going to come and lead us in a time. You've heard from a lot of people here today, but I thought it might be nice for you to hear what the Lord wants to say. So thank you.